Hello and welcome to We Are Venture, the podcast for venture lifestyles. I'm Lara and this is Ruby.
Hi, friends.
This podcast is an insight into our personal experience of creating and launching a startup brand. We're here to give you an honest take on some of the highs and lows and what we've learned throughout the journey so far. Episode 3.
Here we are.
Yes.
Welcome back.
And more of an exciting one this time, I feel.
Yeah, more
us.
exciting for us.
For us.
Yeah.
So it might not apply to everyone starting a business because not everybody needs a manufacturer, but our experience with manufacturers has been quite interesting, hasn't it? So should we go back to square one where it all started? So, okay, I wrote down. So basically we had no idea what to do to start with. We knew we needed manufacturers and we started by researching online, like clothing manufacturers, athleisure wear manufacturers, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there's a real range of ways that you can contact them. So we found that there was like some, it's just a generic send an email, ask for a quote. Some, it's a little bit more personal, like there might be like a WhatsApp number or something. And more often than not, you are dealing with the people overseas in the factories. That can be anywhere in the world, obviously. There are more common places. But we spoke to people from Europe, Asia, all areas of Asia, really. And so it's kind of that. I'm trying to think. And then what we found was generally they just want a very generic like transaction. They just want to know how many you want, what the garments are. Sometimes they want to see, it's called a tech pack of the garments. And then they want to be able to just send you back the quote, you pay the money, and then supposedly the garments will just arrive ready to go. But as you can imagine, for us, we wanted a way more personal approach. Like we wanted a face-to-face discussion. We wanted
and I
a
think
collaboration, you know, really.
Essentially. But it's also, you hear so much about like the factory conditions and like that in itself is another entirely different thing. But just to touch on that, the most obvious and easiest way for us really was like, can you FaceTime? Show me where you are.
Exactly.
Like, show me the workers around you. Show me like where, like, just the setting you're in, basically.
And it's
because
amazing
they
how
sell
many
it all.
didn't want to do that.
Yeah. And we're like, oh, see ya.
Yeah. Nope.
Gone.
Exactly. And so that really thinned it out for us. And I can't believe how many were hesitant to do that, and how many also, because what it was a lot of our ideas as well, we felt the need to explain like the concept and the
they just didn't want to know.
They didn't want to hear it.
Yeah.
And sometimes we wanted advice as well. We want, like, it wasn't just, okay, we want these in this material. We wanted to say, well, what's your opinion on the choice of fabric and how that washes? Or like, obviously you have more of a background in it, but it's still very new to us when it comes to actually designing the full.
Yeah. So despite doing fashion design at university, like I've never like worked with a manufacturer to create my own.
Yeah.
I always used to just go to like a haberdashery or just go to, you know, random shops to like get meters off a reel. Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, it's here. This is fine. This is what I'm working with. And I created something from that. But because we've like custom made our own fabrication, that in itself was like, again, a decision we made further down the line after research and like realizing what like horrendous quality products are actually out there and how damaging they are to the to the environment. But like despite all that, that doesn't mean that just because I have like the knowledge of what that fabric, like the characteristics of that fabric or like how the garment is going to be put together or how it should be pattern cut, that doesn't mean that just because I know those things that I automatically know the process.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like what it entails.
Yeah, and we did find that most of them that didn't want to kind of advise us through it and they just wanted to see a tech pack. Sometimes they would give us like a format because I suppose everyone works differently and there's like a general idea of what they all need, but They all have their own formats. So some of them would send us like a template, should I say, and it was easier for you to input it. But some of them, when they just said, send us your tech packs, that's you working from scratch. And it's not just, do you want to explain what a tech pack is?
Yeah, okay. So that might be helpful.
Yeah.
So essentially, a tech pack it's quite a detailed document, and it is everything you can think of to do with, say, we focus on one garment, say a t-shirt, and it would be, first of all, the shape, the measurements, the fabrication it's made in, even like from the seams, like how that's designed, how it's put together, Pantones, like so
Label
much
details,
goes into it.
like...
So the things you can't see, how it looks on the inside, on the reverse side, like honestly, it's so many hours of work. And I think, I don't know what people do if they didn't have like any knowledge or skill set in like 2D design, which is essentially like drawing the garment on like Illustrator, for example.
Yes.
And they only could just like sketch it. What would they do then? Because they were so pushy, weren't they? Some of them.
To see it.
To be like, or some were actually, you know, they gave great praise and they were like, this is such an incredible tech pack. It's so detailed. But then others were like more like, and then there were others that were literally like, oh yeah, we didn't even need that.
I know.
It was such a mixed bag, wasn't it?
I think,
and there was
some
no
of
like
them,
consistency between what they all needed.
I was going to say some can offer the service, I think, where they do the tech pack for you, can't they?
Yeah.
But then you're really leaving a lot to them, which obviously for us wasn't an option. Like we wanted to be in full control of the design. We didn't need their input in terms of, oh, make it the sleeve this length. Like that was going to be down to us. But they not many were willing to, as I say, like coach us through it. And so again, that was a very time consuming process where you had to spend a lot of time, and at the time as well, which is laughable, we chose 13 garments we wanted to make for our first collection, because this was a streaming big, so it was everything from sports bras to leggings to shorts for men, and you did tech packs for every single one of those, which, as you said,
down to the
detail,
last stitch.
So that includes measuring, drawing,
it's like thousands of hours of work.
And I'm there like, well, I can't just...
That's probably extreme. Hundreds of hours, perhaps.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a long time. It's a long time.
Yeah, and I can't help. Like, it's very much a one-man job in terms of the actual doing of it, and not that I can do it anyway, but... Obviously, the discussion of Rube sending me, what do you think of this sleeve length? Like, all of that is always a joint, like, decision.
Yeah, so usually the process that we went through was I would design a garment, wouldn't I? And then give different variations of that garment for us to discuss.
Yes, exactly.
Essentially, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I can input that, but I can't just sit there, like, being like, yeah, mutual support. Like, yeah. So... moral support, should I say. So there was a lot of, waiting on my end for you to just get that done, which is what we needed, and a lot of pressure on you to get it done.
Alongside working.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a struggle. And as we say, like, some of them are not understanding of that. But it was never consistent. So we'd find that we would do all that work, share it with those manufacturers. And again, sometimes we'd want NDAs, which is where... and, you know, non-disclosure agreement, where they basically agree that they're not going to steal your ideas. So we'd have that. And then it would come back that they were like, oh no, we can't do this. Or they'd try somewhere to cut corners, like, oh, this is nice. Have you thought about it in this cheap cotton material? And we're like, yeah, and it's not an option. So that was a real struggle. And generally speaking, I was going to say, I've wrote down a few things that they asked of us. It was like the MOQ. So that's a minimum order quantity, right?
Yeah.
So some of them, because of the bulk production of it, and like the hours they have to spend on creating the templates and the pattern cutting and fabric dyeing and everything, they need you to order a certain amount for it to be worth their time. So again, that's difficult, because sometimes you can only afford 500, and they want you to be ordering 1,000 plus. Yeah,
some of the manufacturers that we spoke to worked on a much larger scale. Like they'd say, oh yeah, we'll work with like startup brands, and then when you found out the MOQ,
it's just too much.
It was just ridiculous, wasn't it? Like,
because it's an MOQ for every garment, but in every colour, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not like the total amount of units.
No.
Like, yeah.
And it's funny because contacting these people, I remember the one guy, so he was one we found through a mutual friend, wasn't it? So someone my dad knew from work, actually. He was in the business industry, and Dad said, oh, you should have a word with him. Like, see, he knows people over in China and they have factories. And I was like, okay, this could be it. I remember every time we found a manufacturer, I was like, this is it. Like, and we had a nice little meeting with him, and he said, yeah, I'm happy to give you the contact. So we even had to download the Chinese version of WhatsApp, which is called,
what was that called?
WeChat.
Yeah.
Because they're not allowed WhatsApp over there. So we downloaded WeChat, and there was a certain way that you could do that to verify it on our phones. That took ages. Anyway, we finally got in touch with him, and he was better. Like, he was more willing to, because probably of the referral we had, he was more willing to have a discussion. And I remember he sent us some examples of some garments that they were producing just to give us. So that was like progress.
Positive,
yeah. But once again, we got to that phase where they weren't able to see the concept or believe in what we were trying to achieve. And they were still trying to cut corners. Again, it's all cost related.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't an option for us to make it. It had to be sustainable and organic.
And I think there was an element to it where if they didn't see the vision or they hadn't done it before and it was a first for them as well, then it was just like, like
absolutely.
they would either wash their hands of it or they tried to change it. We struggled to find a manufacturer that actually saw the vision and like almost like bent over backwards to be like, we haven't done this before, but we will like talk to the design team and we'll see what we can do and come back and like problem solve and actually be productive.
Yes.
So luckily we have that now.
I know.
But it was a long road, wasn't it? We went through several different of the same process over and over again. And whenever I've like listened to other podcasts of business owners that in different industries, not even like, but creating a product, it was always, the same thing of like, it's not a one-time wonder.
No,
like,
not at all.
It's such a process to establish a relationship with someone that if they are going to be overseas, that you feel like you can form a good relationship with and they actually understand the vision, because you can send over 2D designs and you can have as many Zoom or calls as you want. But actually it's very different when they have to like send the fabrics to you and things like that. That is a delayed process as well.
And sometimes they don't
rather
even
than
offer
just being
that
like
service.
in a room.
You know, sometimes we're like, oh, we'd love to see that. And they're like, oh, that's not something we offer. Like, you just have to see it at bulk. And that's bizarre to us that anyone would commit to a huge bulk order, you know, parting
they were
with
just
thousands
trying
of
it,
pounds.
weren't they?
Well,
Like,
that's the thing. We don't know how much they were just taking advantage. But thankfully, we were wise to like almost always not commit. And I remember actually a real definitive point. So I was actually working on a cruise at the time, and I remember thinking, right, like something's got to change. And I literally did a big Google search. I wrote down probably like 8 to 10 manufacturers I found that I thought were an option. And I sent out a contact to all of them, and the ones we heard back from, we set up little WhatsApp groups. And I remember we had about 4 or 5 on the go, and I was like, Rube, I found these people, like, here we go. And we had the tech packs ready, so that made it easier. And at this point, you were more willing to sort of part with them, because initially we were like, we need to be careful who we, but you're like, right, let's just do it. Let's send it out. Let's see what we get back. And we had some good responses, but we quickly whittled it down. And the one we ended up with, I was really set on this. So we had a couple of Zoom calls, didn't we? And there was 2 or 3 that we were like, we could work with these people. And these guys, I remember thinking, okay, this is the best we've had so far. And I suppose that actually reverse. One of them that we talked to, remember we sent them the tech pack and they gave us a full quote and a breakdown. And that was where we turned a different direction, because we realised that what we were trying to do was way out of our reach at that time. So we just couldn't afford. It was like £200,000, wasn't it?
Yeah, more
something
than
like
that.
that. for what we were
Yeah.
trying to do as our first collection. And we were like, yeah.
With no
what do we do?
investment.
Yeah, exactly. So this took us a while to kind of come to terms with the fact that we might have to do less garments. And
we didn't want to scale it back,
No.
did we? That was the hard thing.
it's really hard because when you have like a full vision, you want it to be the end product at the start, don't you? You
Yeah.
don't want you. It's hard to capture someone with just one garment and then to like
Yeah.
slowly introduce
Yeah.
another. So that took us a while to come to terms with. But when we did eventually decide to like strip it right back and start from scratch, we did have a manufacturer on board, and we were really convinced with these, weren't we? That
Yeah.
I was really happy with them for
Yeah.
a lot of it. Like the communication was great. They were a lot more understanding of our concept.
They were good salesmen.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So again, we kind of went through the necessary stages. We had the quote.
Yeah.
It was all agreed. And when we went to sign for it all, there was that kind of, what's the word? Reservation, apprehension from us, where we were like, we need to make sure that if we're
Before we
sending
sign over this,
the first deposit, that we can back out of this at any point. And I understand that they need that deposit because if they're also putting a lot of work in on their end, they don't want to waste their time and fabrics and that kind of thing. But we were like, let's just see how this goes. So we made an agreement that if this doesn't yeah, go on.
I was going to say our paranoia served us.
Yeah.
Because being careful, we made an agreement, as you're about to say, that up until a certain point, we could back out and get a full refund.
Yeah.
And I think they thought they had us so, like, sold to them, I guess.
Yeah.
Like we were absolutely going ahead with them.
Because we were very complimentary to them, weren't we? Like, we couldn't tell them enough. We were like, you're the best we've worked with. Like, trust me, we've been through them all. Like, you're great.
And they really were. But it was actually, that as soon as I was like, oh, I'm really anxious, and I was at home with my partner, and he was like, okay, let's just sit down and like, what are your reservations? Like, what is it in your gut that's telling you like, oh, I'm just not sure? So he dug a little deeper, and as a business owner himself, he knew how to like look into accounts and things like that, which we had no idea of up until then. And yeah, he did. He's quite a good little spy, really. I was quite surprised. And he dug up some of their past, and yeah, it soon like
I don't know
came
why
to
how we
light
didn't find
really
this
that
before, really.
yeah, because we'd done so much, but obviously not enough. Let's be real. So, and as soon as like all this stuff like came to a head, I was like, whoa, thank.
I mean, what we
God
found
that
really was it was just that like they were kind of not delivering what they said they were going to, weren't they? For people,
Yeah.
people
So they were sending samples of a product, and then the actual bulk that was arriving was a completely different.
Yeah, it was
product.
not to the same standard, and people had
obviously
already paid.
It's done.
Yeah,
like
horrendous,
irreversible. Like you signed a contract.
Yeah, so we would have lost a lot of money, and we almost did. But thankfully, as soon as we had that moment, we were able to. We very calmly. Go on, what?
No, I was going to say, like, I think it's what you're about to say.
Well, I was just going to say, I remember that night because you came round and you're like, Lara, I'm really, like, we were sick about it, weren't we?
Yeah.
We were like sick to our stomachs because we were like, if we can't get this money back, like, it's going to set us back so much. And we just like calmly worded a message together. Like, we were like, and it basically just said, like, kind of on reflection, like I think we actually said something had happened.
There was a bit of a lie.
Like a family, like an unfortunate event has happened.
There was.
And we were like, and unfortunately we're not in the position to continue this process. Like, Rube needs time to grieve. Like, no, but it was like something along those lines of like, we're now in this dilemma that
our priorities have changed. I think it's along those lines.
And we were like, so unfortunately, we're not able to move forward. Like, if you could kindly send back all of our money, that would be great.
Oh, yeah, it was but luckily, as agreed.
As we've agreed, you're going to send it
up until this
back.
point, the money is
and I think we even
refundable.
said, like, let's keep this open, like, because we've loved working with you, like kind of sweeten them up a bit. And we're just like, it's been a pleasure.
We'll
but
be in touch.
yeah,
Yada, yada.
yada, yada, yada.
See ya.
And the wait to hear from them was just like agonizing, because we're like, this could go one of two ways. They could literally go off the surface of where people just disappear.
Yeah.
And we're like, or they could try and make an excuse. Or anyway, thankfully, the reply was actually, we're sorry to hear this. As per agreement, the money will be back with you by. And oh, thank God. And then you think, maybe they weren't so bad. Maybe they're more decent than you think. But or maybe they just thought it's not worth the battle with these people.
They were just trying to save face. Yeah. It was just like, they make you second guess, don't they? If they kick up a fuss, then it just shows that
exactly
their standard. Like, whereas
sure.
if they save face and they're, absolutely, then you think that
maybe they're genuine. Yeah. So either way, as you can imagine, we were relieved that happened, but we'd done so much work with them, hadn't we? Months of back and forth and designing and oh my gosh. And so we were then like, what do we do? And back to square one. And we basically,
that was quite a tough time. Wasn't it? Like, we almost like hit a rut with that, and
it was probably the lowest point.
What? Like, like at this point, we're like a couple of years in. And we're just like
really deflating, because we were like, how are we ever going to know now who to trust? And so after we'd kind of sat with that for a bit, we were like, right, found the motivation again, all self-motivated. And we went ahead again and started our research. And out of the blue, this one popped up, which again, I don't know how we hadn't noticed. In fact, I do think we had inquired. We had inquired.
They said it was because they did work with startup businesses, but because we were working on the full collection at that point of 13 garments, they couldn't offer the one fabrication that we wanted for some of the garments.
Yeah, that was it.
So we were like, well, if you can't do one of them, you can't do any of them.
Yes, that was it.
But we were like, then when we scaled back and we were like, remember those? That we had such a good...
Yeah, because they were our second option, weren't they? But it was only because of what they had available that we were like, we'll go this way. It's
all coming back.
Yeah. But he was a really nice guy, wasn't he? And interestingly, if he's listening, he also had a business partner that he worked with that, again, very similar thing. Like, they had their own little startup and then they decided to create a business that helped other startups, and they're literally just two best friends. And so these guys are actually British, and what helped with this decision was they're basically the middle men for this process.
They already have an established relationship with the manufacturers that we're using.
So it makes the whole process so much easier because they have proof of success, I suppose, with people overseas. They've built a relationship. They deal with all that communication, and they're able to like advise us through it. And so I suppose in the long run, it's perhaps more expensive because you're working with like a third party, but for our peace of mind, it's definitely been the best decision. And it's been, for the most part, like really positive, because we already had the tech packs ready to go, which helped a lot. And they were quite specific about what they needed from us. And they were far more on board with the concept initially. Like, they really understood the sustainable, like, I think they've worked a lot with sustainable brands and
I think, but again, what we were asking for was a little bit like, okay, this is new to us, and they were honest about that, which I actually respected. And I was like, okay, well, if you're willing to give it a go, so are we, kind of thing. Like, what have we got to lose at this point? So I've actually, that was almost what sold it for me, is that they weren't trying to like sell us a pipe dream.
No.
And they were actually realistic and upfront with us and being like, we haven't actually done this before. So let us inquire, get back to you. I don't even know what the costs will be. Like, he was so transparent.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah.
And generally like quite quick back and forth. And we've had obviously Zoom calls. We have a WhatsApp group. And we've had several samples now, haven't we? And there's been some things that we've learned that if you don't put everything in writing, like if you don't like sometimes we'll have a discussion and then after we'll go, oh, we expected this. And he's like, oh, well, we didn't agree to that, or we didn't say that. And it's like, oh, we thought you did, or maybe that was a miscommunication. Like we've had a few of those moments, which whether it's a miscommunication or not, that could be on us that we didn't make it very clear, like in an email or whatever. So that's something we've learned, hasn't it? And that sets back
like,
with a few small,
again, hindsight.
Yeah, a small features of it.
Yeah.
But overall, we've got to where we need to be with them, and we're now on our final sample. And overall, the product is where it should be.
Yeah.
There's a few minor details. And there has been some, because of the nature of our garment being so, not only the unique
the USP
concept of it, but also the fabrication. Like there's a lot to work with, and even Pantone colors, and like that's been funny. We received one that it was like not up to what we got.
I was gonna say we chose the Pantone colours that we wanted, didn't we? And
which can take hours because,
there's like a plethora
obviously
of Pantones.
So many shades of black you wouldn't believe. Like is black even a colour? Like literally.
So we chose these Pantones and we got the samples sent in supposedly in those Pantones.
Yeah.
And the one was just...
It just wasn't anything like it, was it?
It was horrendous.
You described it as magnolia.
Yeah.
Like magnolia walls.
I literally, in one part of my house, I have magnolia walls, and I literally, on Zoom, I was so over it. I was done. It was getting a little bit hostile at one point, so I was over it. And I literally just picked this, turned the laptop round and just picked up the garment next to the wall, and I was like, they're the same. Guess what colour paint that is?
Yeah, which obviously, if you like magnolias and that's what you're after, fine.
But it wasn't.
But that was nothing like, we're going for a bit more of a luxury feel, and it just didn't really, it wasn't in keeping with what we asked for. It wasn't
what we asked for.
So, thankfully, they did acknowledge that, and they've done us a second round of that, and it's perfection.
Yeah, it's so good. Like he even said, didn't he almost didn't, because we almost we weren't even calling him for that reason. No, we almost blindsided him a little bit. Yeah. So he handled that really well.
Yeah.
Because we were calling him for a completely different reason.
Yeah.
And then we were like, by the way, the samples arrived, so let's talk about that. Yeah. Because it was pressing.
Yeah. And we were like,
well, we've got you.
Yeah. And we went through.
So he was like, okay. And he didn't take fault or blame on their side, did he? He was just literally, he was so level-headed about it, to be fair to him. And he was like, okay, let me investigate this and I'll get back to you, kind of thing.
Yeah, where it went wrong. Was it that we sent the wrong code? Was it that they received it wrong? Was it they literally, I don't know. I mean, whatever the reason is, as we said, we got there. And so, it's a lot more positive. And I suppose as businesses go on, more often than not, they don't work with the same manufacturers, or they work with several different ones, because I think what you find is different factories specialize in different things, or they have different strengths.
And there's also different machinery as well. It depends on the size of their operation as well.
So we will probably find that we'll have to reach out to others, but hopefully by then, with more experience and more of a place in the industry, it will be far easier to make those connections, and we'll have a lot more experience, as I say, and knowledge on how to approach them. And but gosh, it's been a journey, hasn't it? And we're just there now.
Yeah.
And even now, the anxiety of not receiving the correct bulk, we will go for the final bulk, and if something is not quite right with those 1,000 garments,
well, that's the thing. It's just, luckily we've established that relationship and the trust with the manufacturer that we have. Yes, we've had our slip-ups in the past, like the Pantone and previous samples or whatever, but all he's done is reassure us and tell us, and he actually took fault for some things, didn't he?
Yes.
Since then. And the little things, he's always been noted, no problem.
Yes.
So all you can do is go off, I don't know what else besides getting samples and taking people's word for it. What else is it you can do?
That it's going to arrive and be of the standard. Yeah,
everyone takes a risk.
Absolutely.
People are brave. Don't know if I am.
No, I know it's scary. But yeah, I think we have been really specific, and I think that's all you can be, isn't it? And I think you have to be so certain of your design idea and vision, because that's the other thing. You do get to a final stage where you can't backtrack. So like you can't just get to that one phase and then be like, oh, actually this fabric's not quite right. Like, can we change that? Like, because
we did that early on.
Yeah, we did. We
and we
do
paid
that.
the price.
Yeah, you pay the price because they already. Well, you know more about it. They like, what is it? They yarn the fabric or something, or they.
Yeah, so they've already So basically, they already bought the yarn because we were having custom fabric. They bought the yarn from like which was specific. Let's just simplify it by saying that. And because we changed the fabric composition, it changed the yarn.
The amount,
we added something extra in. So that was another added cost. And
when he said, oh, basically. So now your quote is this, we were like, oh, but we agreed on a quote. He's like, yes, but you've added this. And we're like, oh, but can't we just stay?
It seems obvious. But yeah.
So yeah. And luckily it was still at an early-ish stage. But yeah, way further down the line, it would really set you back. So I feel like you have to be very certain on what you're after. And if you can communicate that clearly, then there's less likely to be issues.
Again, like we changed our fabric composition based on the first sample.
Well, yeah.
How people go off that.
I know.
And they're just like, yeah, I want it in this and this. Like,
yeah. Because know, speaking from a person who has no experience in this area, like, when you look at your label and it says like 70% cotton, 5% spandex, whatever it is, that's the composition. So like, obviously some things are going to be 100% cotton, but more often than not, you're creating a composition, right? So some of them, I'm guessing, are already sort of generic and they have that ready to go. But if you're like, oh, we want like 60% of this and 40% of this.
As soon as it's custom. Yeah. That's it.
So then you are creating it from scratch. So how can there is no example of that for you to feel the weight of and the elasticity or whatever it may be.
And again, our naivety was, can we just have a sample of that fabric, please? And he was like, if you want the fabric, like, our machines can't just reel off a meter. Like,
we have to create
it's a huge machine. We'll have it's a minimum of like 500 meters. And we were like, oh, yeah. Well, I don't need that. And I think I just want a little swatch, please.
I think he does say because they work with smaller numbers, and because that was the other thing, actually, we didn't mention this, but because they work with startup brands, their MOQs are lower, aren't they? So, but because they do everything on a smaller scale, they can't just reel you off a piece of fabric. Like, people who are perhaps on a bigger scale probably have the means to do that. But he was like, yeah, with us, you've got to commit to it all because it's going to take a lot and cost a lot and whatever. So, yeah, but you live and you learn.
Yeah.
And we're so excited now because we're right on the cusp, aren't we?
They were chomping at the bit.
Yeah, and then it will all feel so worth it. Like, already we're able to laugh about some of the experiences. And
I mean, it's been a bit wild.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be what it is. And I don't see how we could have avoided this really, because like we say, it was just fully learning process. And I feel like we always had our wits about us, but it's
the first time. Everything we're doing is the first time, the first run through. Like, even when you start again with the 10,000th manufacturer, like, every conversation you have is new. Like, yes, you've learned something from the last one, but they may do things differently.
Yes.
And there's always something that, I mean, you just got to find the right fit.
Yeah.
That's what we learn.
All being well, we'll be able to, give these guys a bit of a shout out eventually when it all comes to, because they have been great.
That would be nice.
And they're lovely, aren't they? So,
share a bit of
many
appreciation.
ways, it's been a pleasure. Yeah. So that's that, isn't it? I'm trying to think if there's anything else we need to cover on this one.
No, I feel like so far that is like our manufacturing process, like in a nutshell, really. Yeah. Like,
without going into detail, because as we say, it's been years of it, hasn't it? But
yeah, we're literally like digging up the past.
Yeah.
It's a bit triggering.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's great. We got it. Yeah. And I suppose when we talk design, you can go into more detail about some of the tech pack stuff,
Yes.
because that's another episode pending. Initial design
The best
ideas.
episode.
Yeah, over to Rube. Really excited to share,
Yeah.
because that's been fun. So yeah, should we round it off?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think we've said enough.
Yeah, lovely. So thanks for listening as always. And yeah, we hope you're intrigued to hear more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, what episode are we on now?
That was episode 3, right?
See you for episode 4.